Hi, my name is Jody Ortiz, and I am a writer, author, poet, and I was a ghostwriter for several years, so I know a few things about writing books. And I am here on St. Patrick's Day in my green with my little palm tree earrings and my scarf that I knitted with my little Chanel brooch holding it on. And I am trying to be festive for St. Patrick's Day, so we'll see how this goes. But today we are going to talk about the role of conflict in storytelling. And if you see me reading occasionally, it's because I put my notes on my iPad so that I don't ramble on and on for hours and make this video way too long to edit. So here we go. Conflict is the driving force behind every great novel, as you know, every great story. It shapes characters, themes, and the very essence of a story's world, from dystopian nightmares to psychological thrillers. Conflict defines the struggles that keep us hooked to a story. So there are different types of conflict in storytelling, and today we're going to break down those types, and then I'm going to, at the very end, I'm going to walk you through exercises that describe how, or walk you through how to add that conflict to your story. So the first type of conflict is person versus society, basically the fight against oppression. If you think about Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale, I've read the book a few times. I've read almost all of Margaret Atwood's books, and I've read all of the Handmaid's Tale world books. I think there's 2 so far. And I've watched the series a couple of times, and we just started watching it again. If you think about that book, it throws us into a world where women are stripped of autonomy, forced into rigid roles under a theocratic regime. Offred's internal and external battles highlight how personal resistance can become a powerful act of rebellion. She starts out, we watched, in the episode that we watched last night, she met her first rebel force person, and she was like, and they were like, join us, and she was like, I'm not that type of person. And it's kind of funny, when you look back at after watching the whole series and reading the books, you look back at everything that she's been through. She started out thinking that she would never be the type of person to join a rebellion. In Orwell's 1984, Winston Smith is pitted against Big Brother's omnipresent control. His desire for truth and freedom clashes with a system designed to erase individuality, and the result is a terrifying exploration of power and submission. I read 1984 when I was in junior high. It was a required reading, and I think it was like 1981 or 1982, so 1984 hadn't even happened yet. And as a junior high student thinking, oh my gosh, cameras everywhere, or people, how can people see people everywhere? Like, this is the 80s, we didn't have all of that. So it was a little, the dystopian visuality created a realistic terror in me as a child, and I loved it. Like, I loved Stephen King. I grew up reading Stephen King and V.C. Andrews, and I loved that book, and so I've read it a few times since then. And if you think about reading 1984, like pre-1984, it really took you on this journey of, oh my gosh, what what could really happen in society. And that creates this, very personal versus societal conflict. In my book, my dystopian novel, The Good Woman, Claire fights against a dictatorship that has erased women's rights and reduced them to property. Every step she takes toward freedom is a direct act of defiance. Like Offred and Winston, she risks everything in a world where obedience is survival. It really opens up the world. So what happens when a person stands up to an entire system? Conflict. And that conflict fuels the story. So another type of conflict is person versus person. This involves things like deception, manipulation, and survival. In Gillian Flynn's Gone Girl, this book thrives on conflict between two people. Nick and Amy Dunn, their marriage, once picture perfect, unravels into a psychological war. Lies, media manipulation, and betrayal create a twisted battle where neither side can be trusted. I've always heard that you need to trust the narrator of the story, but what happens when you don't trust that narrator? When there are little inklings of betrayal from the narrator, like, can I actually trust what this narrator is saying? Can I trust the reality that they're painting? In The Good Woman, Eleanor Davis and Claire form an uneasy alliance. They're on opposite sides of power, yet both women face internal struggles, one trapped in a privileged yet suffocating role, the other forced into submission under the regime. Their conflicting motivations drive tension, keeping the reader guessing. These are women that are very much pitted against each other on purpose in society. Like, the regime has pitted different classes of people against each other to make them not trust each other so that they can maintain control. And these women find themselves in a very conflicted role because they are forced to trust somebody that they're told not to trust so that they can reach their end goal. When two strong forces collide, the story crackles with intensity, and that's what makes the conflict keep you engaged, keep you going. Another type of conflict is person versus self, and this is the internal struggle. Not all battles are fought with weapons or words. Some are fought in the mind. In 1984, Winston's internal war against indoctrination is just as powerful as his external one. The struggle to maintain his beliefs in a world of lies is his greatest conflict. Winston's role within the society is to rewrite history, to literally rewrite history. And so as he's rewriting history, he's trying to maintain a sense of truth, a sense of awareness, a sense of, okay, this is what's actually happening in society. He's trying to keep that indoctrination out of his mind. In Stephen King's Cujo, Donna Trenton is trapped in a car with her child and she faces a rabid dog. Beyond the external terror, she's also battling guilt, fear, and desperation. Did she put herself in this position? Did she put her child's life at risk? Her survival depends on conquering her own doubt. In The Good Woman, Claire wrestles with the choices she must make. To survive, she plays the role of the obedient servant, but inside she's planning her escape, her resistance. Every moment is a battle between appearing compliant and fighting for her future. She really wants to change her current circumstances, and she has to really keep up this facade of, I'm playing along, I'm being the good, obedient house servant, I'm being exactly what you expect me to be, what you want me to be, but internally she's screaming. She wants to get out. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy is inside us. And then there's the conflict of person versus nature. This is uncontrollable forces like tornadoes and floods and what we've experienced in Oklahoma over the last week, the wildfires, and what Los Angeles has experienced recently. This is how unpredictable the adversary can be. You have no control over nature. In Cujo, the oppressive heat and isolation heightened Donna's fear. The rabid dog is not just an external threat, it is nature at its most relentless. In Animal Farm, nature isn't the direct antagonist, but the changing seasons and the farm struggles reflect the failures of the pig's rule. As winter sets in, the animals suffer, their hope deteriorates. In The Good Woman, the environment itself is a tool of oppression. The regime controls food, movement, and resources. They control everything. They make daily survival a battle. Every journey is a fight against a landscape turned hostile. In The Good Woman, The global warming has taken full effect, and they are living in a very hostile environment, and they are trying to survive, and they are trying to survive not on their own skills, not on their own knowledge, but on the regime's good graces. Like, you have to be in good graces with the regime because they are providing everything that they need. Nature doesn't care about morality, it simply is, and that makes one of the most terrifying conflicts in fiction. So if you can create a world where people are forced to survive not just the other people in the world, and not just their internal conflicts, but also the world itself, this really adds, ups the value of the conflict in the story. So now that we're going to talk about how to add more conflict to your story, and we're going to work through a few exercises. So what you want to do is you want to raise the stakes, make the consequences of failure worse. Instead of just losing a job, a character might lose their home, their family, or even their life. Every time they think things can't get worse, make them worse. Like, every bad thing that you can think that the character could face, throw that at them. Make them survive it, or not survive, depending on if you're going to do like Stephen King and kill your darlings, or if you're going to save them and let them prevail over the conflict. So let's do a little exercise. Think about a scene where your character faces a minor problem. Now, increase the consequences. If they're late to work, what happens if they get fired? If they're caught stealing, what if it's not just about jail, but execution? Think about, like, if somebody's late for work and they get fired, what's the trickle-down effect? It's not just them losing their job, it's them losing their home, their marriage or relationship, their children. Think about not being able to pay child support, children visitation. There are several true crime cases where the seemingly simple event of losing one's job has really upended somebody's world and made them turn to very hostile reaction against either their employer or society as a whole. So think about, how can someone being late, like, what's the worst thing could happen for them being late? And if they're caught stealing, what if they stole something and then they were the last person seen at the scene of the crime, and then later the victim of the theft turns up dead? What happens then? Where, they were the last person seen. They were, they left fingerprints, they left a hair, they left something behind, and then they are charged with murder. And all they did, well, not all they did, but they stole from the person, and then they're charged with murder. And they're in a state like Oklahoma that loves the death penalty. So what could happen there? Write a scene where your character is forced to act immediately because the cost of failure is unbearable. So if you want to pause the video for a moment and work on this, you can, or if you want to take notes and come back to this later, think about how to put your character in the worst possible position. Either the position is really bad from the beginning, or it's a seemingly simple act and then it can have devastating consequences. Write that scene and see how it works in your story. So your character must deliver an important message, but something stands in their way. A storm, an enemy, or their own fears. What happens if they fail? So think about these things as you do this exercise. Okay, so for the second exercise, we're going to give your character opposing goals. So if two people want the same thing, conflict is inevitable. Maybe one wants freedom while the other wants control. Maybe they love the same person. Whatever it is, make sure their desires clash. So this is another exercise. Write a scene where two characters argue, but neither is entirely wrong. Make sure they both have strong reasons for their beliefs. Something to think about along these lines is there is no truly evil character. we all have reasons for doing evil acts. We all have reasons that we are willing to do something unthinkable for. And so give your character a backstory. What is the motivating factor for them to do something like this that it seems to be out of character but is really in character? And then you can also create a new character whose only purpose is to disrupt your protagonist's goal. Write a dialogue between them and escalate the tension. Okay, so think about two characters both need the last ticket to escape a doomed city. Only one can have it. How do they fight for it? In thinking about this scene, you can think about the scene from Home Alone where the desperate mom is at the airport and she's willing to do whatever, pay whatever to get a plane ticket home. And people are too concerned about their own lives to give in and say, okay, here, you can have my ticket or whatever. You know, she's fighting against people that have common goals of getting to their desired place, but hers is her reason for getting there is even more motivating because her child is home alone. So think about that. And again, you can either pause or take notes and come back to this exercise later. And number 3, we're going to add a deadline. So a ticking clock ramps up the tension. Will Winston be caught before he finishes his rebellion in 1984? Will Claire escape before she's forced into marriage in The Good Woman? The pressure forces action, which creates drama. Here's the exercise. Rewrite a scene from your story, but add a strict deadline. If the character doesn't succeed in 5 minutes, 5 hours, or 5 days, something terrible will happen. How does this change the scene? And this you can think, I mean, there are multiple movies and books that you can think about for this exercise. Think about the one with, I don't remember the name of the movie at the moment, but the one with Keanu Reeves on the runaway bus, and he's trying to stop the bus before, you know, it hits a certain highway. Like it's going to be a matter of time before it gets on this highway that's a dead end or whatever, and he's trying to keep the bus from blowing up. Think about this type of escalation in your story. Imagine that the character has 24 hours to make a life-changing decision. What will they do? Your character, so here's a writing prompt for an exercise. If you don't have a character in mind, your character has 30 minutes to find an antidote before the poison in their vein kills them. But someone doesn't want them to succeed. So that's a writing prompt if you don't already have a character in mind. Okay, so number 4, we're going to force characters into tough choices. The best conflict comes from decisions that aren't black and white. Should a character betray their best friend to save their own life? Should they choose safety or love make them squirm? So for this exercise, you can create a list of 5 difficult choices your protagonist might have to make. Now force them to make one of them. What would be 5 difficult choices that your character would need to make? Write a scene where your character has 2 equally terrible choices and they must decide in the next 5 minutes. Here's a writing prompt if you don't have a character in mind. Your character has the power to save only one person, the love of their life, or an innocent child. Who do they choose and why? It's kind of like the exercise with the bus. So you're going to hit the one person, or you're going to hit the crowd of people. What are you going to do? Whose life are you going to choose? And then number 5, now we're going to make it personal. Conflict hits hardest when it's deeply connected to a character's emotions, past trauma, or biggest fears. Nick and Amy's battle in Gone Girl is so intense because it's not just about a missing person. It's about their marriage, their public image, and their secrets. So write a scene where your character is forced to confront their worst fear. How would they react? Think about your character's biggest secret. What happens when someone else finds out? Write that scene. You can give your character like a big secret that would destroy lives. So not just their lives, but destroy lives of people that they care about. Let's say that the character cheated with the best friend's husband way back in the day, or something like that. And if this secret comes out, it would not only destroy your character's friendship, but also destroy your character's best friend's marriage. Here's a writing prompt if you don't have one already. Your character's biggest fear just became a reality. They have no choice but to face it head on. What will happen next? Conflict isn't about explosions or fights. It's about choices, emotions, and impossible situations. And so now that you know why conflict matters and how to add conflict to your story, just know that it's the heartbeat of storytelling. It makes us care. It makes us anxious. It keeps us flipping pages. Think about all the stories that you have stayed up late at night and you don't want to go to bed because you want to find out what happens next, because this person just asked this person on a date and you want to know if they actually go on the date. Just think about what keeps the people turning pages, what keeps your readers invested in the story. And think about The Handmaid's Tale without conflict. It would just be about women in red dresses, basically, because the entire world is conflicting. Their entire existence is conflict. 1984 without conflict would be a book about a government, not a soul-crushing nightmare. Gone Girl without conflict would be a love story, not psychological chess game. The Good Woman without conflict would be a world without resistance. It would just be a regime taking over and people saying yes sir, no sir, and there would be no fight back. And just imagine that world. Conflict is the story. So next time you dive into a book or start writing your own, ask yourself, what's the battle? Where's the battle in this story? Because the battle is what keeps us hooked. So I hope this helped you. If it did, please like, subscribe, and share. And keep writing, keep dreaming, and keep being your authentic self.